for everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have today Cathy Franz, who is a really great real estate attorney. I've used her on all of my transactions. I refuse to use anybody else other than her. She's I've watched her like really go to war for her clients and getting things done and getting out of attorney review and just being great at everything that she does. So I wanted to bring her on to just kind of give us a little bit of insight on the attorney review process, the what some errors we make going through attorney review, and just some general knowledge about what your role is during the transaction.
So I have to say I'm going to tell you guys a little story that I just went through, which from a seller's point of view is going to be very helpful to all of you because this was way beyond my comprehension. I just had a file that I represented 3 sellers on a vacant land in Somerville that a realtor gave me contacts, gave me the clients, which I usually normally get, and they were fraudulent sellers. So we did not know this, obviously. Transaction closed. Title company couldn't verify their wire instructions because they have these services now, which a lot of people fail. And so they wired to me, and I wired to the two of the 3 people that I had been dealing with from day one. I get a call about an hour later that the real seller found out the property was trying to be sold and it wasn't for sale. So as you can guess, my heart landed in my stomach. And I said to the man, I got to call my bank. I got to see if I can get these wires back. I don't know how this happened. So I got one of the 2 wires back. I'm still out $105,000. And the buyer does not have a property. And the only reason we found out so quickly was because a nosy neighbor, thank God for nosy neighbors, saw service flags on the property and mentioned it to the dad who lived down the street. And he's like, no, the boys aren't selling the property. And he called his son. Son found the listing on the internet and called the realtor and then called me. So my number one is I don't know what happens when you guys meet your sellers for the first time and don't know them, or if you ever deal with vacant land, but this realtor never met her sellers. They reached out to her on the internet, but I have to tell you, they had driver licenses that looked valid. They had all the answers to all the questions. They had addresses, socials, which I don't obviously know if any of it's legit. So a very, very hard thing to figure out if they were really the real people. I guess when you look back on it, she said that her red flag was they didn't want a sign put up. But it was land and they just said they didn't want the neighbors knowing, kind of a thing. And I don't know if she ever met them in person and or got IDs, but they reached out to her on the internet and she did everything via email, DocuSign, whatever. I have been told, and I don't know, that she's going to be the one who takes the fall on this because of not knowing. And I'm not sure, based on the information that I had, how she would know they weren't the real people unless she actually went to one of the addresses, which was a local address, to get something, to meet the person in person. I've since learned this is one of the biggest scams out there. It's happening all over the country. These people knew exactly what they're doing, so I know it wasn't their first time. And it's something I think from your point of view, there's a lot of extra liability that nobody even knew about. I have talked to a lot of people since this happened because it's something attorneys are baffled about. A lot of people said they wouldn't have done anything any differently. I've talked to realtors because I don't know what happens when you guys meet your clients or not meet them, internet clients. I mean, I've had clients who sell to their tenants who live out of state I've never met. So there are people, I have one right now, they're selling a house in Hillsborough and they've moved out of state and their son was living there for years. And I need to figure out a way to make sure I can verify they're really them. There's a lot of services out there that, like an IntelliCheck is one of them that one of my title companies use. I talked to Raj about it, but they actually, before they wire to a seller, they want to know, send them their ID via, I think it's text, and they can put it in some system for $1 and confirm if it's a real ID. Now, I don't know what would have happened with my fraud people because they had New Jersey driver's licenses. I don't know whose pictures were on them, but I don't know if that would have passed something like that. But it's real, it's scary, and it's very upsetting. Like I know many attorneys, and I've talked to them because I keep bringing this to people's attention because I didn't realize how easy it was or how much information they had to make this happen. Um,
Wow.
just there were other weird things that happened in the transaction, but like they weren't available to sign documents. You don't know how many sellers tell me they're not available to sign documents. The ones I have right now in Colorado are not going to come up here for the closing. I'm going to send them documents. They're going to get them notarized and sent back. And so not always a red flag either. And I'm sure from your point of view, people reach out to you on the internet all the time.
Mhm.
Right. When they, for whatever reasons. And that it's huge right now. They're saying that this is the biggest fraud in the country. And it's easy to steal vacant land because nobody's checking up on it. Some of the owners don't live in state. Um, I there's things about account numbers I've learned that are fraudulent, like accounts that are pass-through accounts. A 705 account number that starts with 705 and is at least 12 digits long is not going to where you think it's going. It's going somewhere else. So just things that no one teaches us. No one tells us how to confirm the ID is fake or not.
Mhm.
But in the end, somebody's got to be responsible.
True. I would say the only way to verify that, or how we would verify, especially on a seller side, would be using the tax records, because you would have to go through the tax records to verify, especially if somebody was out of state. That would be the first thing I would do to verify that person, because I would hate to be in that situation that you're explaining, of someone being fraudulent and, me not knowing, and I didn't vet the person properly, and I didn't look up the tax record to see the name on the deed or anything else like that, or at least do some due diligence on that person. So, for
Right.
example, I have a an online lead that I got from a buyer. He's telling me he wants to buy a $1.3 million house, right? Sounds amazing, right? Any person would fall into that. So I had him send me some information. He still has yet to send me his ID. He won't send me his proof of funds, like red flag. So I'm going to ask
Right.
you for
Right.
these things that I know to verify you beforehand. And if you are causing any type of, you're delaying whatever you're doing, I know then this is a no-go. So we that's definitely something, and definitely an eye opener to keep a lookout for, are definitely these fraudulent things.
Yeah, one of the things the title company said a bulletin they got was the day of or the day after this happened to me is a lot of title companies will send a letter to the tax record address with a code and say, we're a title company, we have a contract to sell on this property and we're on a closing scheduled. Are you selling this property? Here's a code, call us and confirm. But then the next day, right after this happened, they said they had another bulletin come out saying these fraudsters are getting smart and they're changing that address on the tax record so that when you reach out to them and ask them if they're selling the property, it's going to them and not the real owner. So I don't know how you protect against that.
That's
And I don't
true.
know what they're doing to have a tax office change the tax record because it shouldn't be that easy.
Right, that it shouldn't be that easy. Right. It
So
shouldn't
they're
be that
figuring
easy
out
to change. You
they're,
can't change a recorded county clerk documents, or, things like that. I don't understand how they would be able to go in and change
well,
names.
yeah, tax records. I mean, usually it's the address on the deed and they won't change it unless they get a new deed. But
Right.
I don't know what these people are doing, but it's just
Very true.
it's scary because it's
It is
another thing
scary.
they're getting a step ahead of us. Now,
Right.
only other person since I've talked to somebody about this whole deal told me that they had a tenant who tried to sell the property to somebody, owner out of state again, tenant decided to sell the property and they only caught them because they messed up and they took back a $20,000 mortgage or something and had an address on it because the people didn't have enough money. So so that's how they end up
Wow.
finding the people. But I just was like, there's some crazy stuff out there.
Yeah, I also think it's a red flag now that, MLSs don't require us to use listing agreements anymore. We don't have to
Yeah.
upload a listing agreement. I think that's very dangerous, because there's no verification of the seller, to the actual listing service. I could put a property on the MLS right now, just any property I choose,
Yeah.
without any verification, without any documentation, without anything, and that's scary.
And I think, I mean, I don't know how much you guys like Zillow. People are always like love Zillow and reference Zillow. And I'm like, to me, Zillow means nothing. Like, I don't look at Zillow. I don't look at properties on Zillow. I don't care about the Zestimate. Like, to me, those are just like not as real as having an appraisal, having someone who's on site, a realtor that is doing this and meeting the people and hand in hand, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I just think that just something I wanted to bring to everyone's attention because I don't know what's going to happen, but somebody's got to come out of pocket $105,000, whether it's insurance, E&O, or whatnot, to make these people whole.
Right.
Um, so that's my biggest thing. So when it comes to the contracts, from my point of view, like things that are overlooked or not filled in or checked are hard for me when I look at a contract because obviously I know nothing about the property. Um, Names spelled wrong, sellers like the wrong seller. Like I think you usually go off the tax record, right? When you do the sellers. Um, and I guess like when there's an estate, like I get sometimes I get some weird things in the sellers, but the seller should be like I know you as a buyer's agent fills out the contract initially, right? And then you sign it, send it to seller. And obviously there's some things in there you don't know. You don't know paragraph 10 if there's any added assessment that they're aware of. So that box often doesn't get checked. But like the septic and the sewer and the cesspool stuff, like a lot of times those boxes aren't checked. And those things make it hard for us reviewing the contract to know what's going on. Things not being proper, like, actually, I just got a contract and, page one, everybody keeps missing signing page one on the seller side. I don't know why, like, and you technically don't have a fully executed contract. And obviously when you get them back, when you're the buyer side, I don't know. I don't, you don't know what the other agent's doing if they're just throwing it in DocuSign, saying sign, 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 and not looking at it. But it seems to me really important to have sellers look at some of that stuff and fill in. Like, can a seller once they get a contract to sign, like add something? Can they check the box to say no? There's no assessments that I know of. Can they check a septic they can't once they get it?
They can only sign it because it's already signed by the buyer. So all the changes are already made by the buyer's agent beforehand. The only thing we can do is like do an addendum for
Right.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that process, obviously.
Yeah.
So I don't get involved until after that process. And I was always wondering why like sellers don't
Well, the
like.
buyer's agent technically doesn't, I mean, it's also something that a lot of us don't ask about as well, about the cesspool and the septic. When we're writing up the offer, we're kind of just writing up the offer, right? We're not really thinking too much about the septic and cesspool. That's why you see it's unchecked because it's not something that we generally think about. Even though it's in the contract, and we should technically be asking those questions and know whether it's septic, cesspool, whatever the case may be. Or, I mean, I always put not applicable, whatever it is, if it
Okay.
applies. But then most agents just skip through it because they don't know, and they're just trying to put an offer in as quick as possible for their clients. So they just overlook it. And then when it gets accepted, you can't go back and now change it.
Yeah. So let's talk about our contract. We were down at 300 Black Point. I had no idea that was a septic because there was not a septic rider, which should be attached, which I'm going to be asking for. And none of those other boxes were checked. And I'll assume then, and I will look at some of the seller's disclosures and some of the stuff if I have them, but I will look at those to see what they say. So when I do my buyer letter, I'm always like, please confirm it's public water and sewer or whatever it is. Because there's
Mhm.
different things we put in our riders based on the fact that there's well and or septic and or solar panels. So when the riders aren't attached, or even an association. So when those riders aren't attached, or sometimes they're checked and not attached, sometimes they're just not checked.
Mhm.
And to me, you really don't have a great contract because that's not stuff that should be amended in attorney review. That's stuff that should be a part of the original deal.
Right.
So that's a big thing I have a really hard time with is when I get all these contracts and I feel like it's not my job to be a detective and to learn everything about this property on
Mhm.
my own, right? These are things that I should be told so I know how to deal with them then. On both sides, buy and sell.
Right.
And I always ask the question, but and many times I'll get it, the box will be checked for the riders to be attached and there's no riders. And so I guess that's, when you're submitting, I guess that's something you have to do when you submit the offer as well, correct?
Right. That's something that should be submitted with the offer as well. Once the buyer sends the offer to us, then this should automatically be a writer that's signed as well for the septic and the and or well or whatever it is. That should always also be attached.
Yes.
But then again, a lot of agents don't ask for it because they're not really thinking about it. But as a seller's agent, we should already automatically be privy to sending that information to them when they want to put an offer in.
Right. Because I
Yeah.
mean, like that's a big deal. It can be a septic versus a sewer, right? I
Right.
mean, That's a big ticket item. That's a whole different inspection. That's a whole nother layer of things you got to do. And most of them have issues, unfortunately, the older ones.
Hmm.
And people are like, oh, it's working fine. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, no, that's not how it goes, right? So then you get these 20, 30, 40, $50,000 credit issues that you
Right.
got to figure out how to deal with if one way or the other, right? I mean, I've had to hold escrows outside of closing. I've had to do other things. Because a lot of times sellers have no idea of the condition of their septic. And depending on the town they're in, some towns won't let you repair, some towns will, some towns are more stringent in the pumping. Like that's a big, I don't say pain in the butt for an attorney, but when I get these septic, well, and solar panel addendums, I'm like, oh, here we go. Like this is not going to be as straightforward as you think it should be. And buyers are kind of dumb and sellers are kind of dumb. So a lot of people don't know like how many solar contracts I've had that they don't have an idea if they own it, if they lease it, if they're just financing it, if they're renting,
Right.
they don't know.
Yeah.
And I have one right now with Joe Cozon, and the people installed the solar, had a new roof put on in the process. They're in the midst of a very nasty divorce, and now we're trying to sell it, and the solar was never hooked up. They're paying on a payment every month, and the solar was never connected because the solar company filed bankruptcy. So what a mess. We're talking $80,000 was paid for the solar, including a roof. And you have a divorce where it's every penny counts, and you got to get both sides to agree. And Joe has been, God bless him, he has been dealing with solar, JCP&L permits, trying to see if they can get the system working. Because again,
That's crazy.
sellers don't have no idea. So those are things that make it harder. Like in that instance, I don't think we knew there was a solar system, but when you don't know it up front or you don't have it in the contract and then you got to redo the addendums and change things, it makes it messier for us, but it also makes it messier for the lenders. The lenders like to see a pretty all-in-one contract. So when we submit, when your buyer submits a contract that isn't signed or dated properly, it turns into that you almost got to redo the whole thing instead of try to swap up, the pages, or you have to manually do it. And it just slows that process down because then they put a halt in everything because they don't have a fully executed contract. So that was probably my biggest thing, is not having a fully executed contract with all riders, addendums, things filled in. Um, and it's like, with the one we're doing now with the exclusions, even though it's in the MLS, then I don't know if when they submit you the contract, you say you need to add, before you sign it, you need to add dining room light fixture is going to be taken, those kind
Right.
of that aren't, because
I did say that to her, and then she sent it back, and she's like, "Oh well, I forgot to do it after we had already signed it." I'm like, "Oh well."
well, I guess maybe that I don't know how easy it is to get somebody to do that. I don't know how hard the process is to do a contract, but it just the more you
It's
have
just a
in the
lot of reading.
beginning, yeah, the more you have in the beginning, the easier the whole process is and the attorney review is, because then there's not like surprises. And then like the other attorney doesn't know there's a septic, and I don't, so then he's going to change his letter to know that if there's a septic versus, so then we're going
Mhm.
to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. When if we had all the information in the beginning, it would have been much easier to deal with. Um, and then I guess my other big, I don't say issue is when sometimes the only contact I get for clients is through the realtor. So, I always email my letters to them to review because you want them to see things in writing and to look at things before you try to talk to them about it, and not having either an adequate email. I mean, you gave me the email and phone number, but a lot of times I don't have an email or phone number for my client. Like, okay, I just got these two contracts from an investor I talked to a year ago. Nobody reached out to me. I just get these contracts there, and I'm like, hello, like, you're gonna call me and tell me that I'm doing something for you? Don't just assume because I get an email that I'm gonna jump on it. Because I've gotten a couple weird emails that were not legit, that I won't, if I don't know what it is, I won't open it.
Mhm.
So I think that from my point of view, those are the biggest things, is just having the right contacts, having everything as accurate and complete as possible. Because, and the whole thing with the new seller's disclosure, and I just got this contract from this attorney. I don't think she does real estate. She wants a lead paint inspection by the seller because of the lead paint for the rentals. So she cites the rental law, and I'm like, this isn't applicable. We're selling. We're not. It might be, you can do a test for lead paint. So, you got to deal with people who don't know what they're doing either. But
Mhm.
but it's much easier when you got the whole thing from the beginning, at least as accurate as possible. And I guess why people sign contracts when their names are wrong, if their names are missing, those are things I just can't wrap my head around, because how do I know you don't want your spouse in the contract? Or how do I know you have a spouse? How do I know, those are things that I really wouldn't know. So I guess maybe we need to mention to our clients, they actually need to read what they're signing to
Hmm.
make sure it's correct. How many people have asked me, I don't know what the closing date is. I'm like, you signed a contract with this closing date. How do you not know what day we're trying to close? I mean, so those like, and I'm sure you
Yeah,
guys don't
that's
know that those questions, like about those questions, but I'm like, I think it's
mhm.
maybe important to have your, buyers read their names, know the closing date, know just the numbers, go through the numbers, or whatever,
Mhm.
obviously they're not going to know much about the property because they're buyers. And as a seller, to make sure their names are correct, that, everything gets signed correctly, and maybe ask the questions about septic well, those things. I mean, it should be in the MLS, it should be there. But if you're getting contracts that aren't complete, I think you got to be, as a seller's attorney, or seller's agent, you got to be more diligent with the buyers doing it right. So,
Mhm.
if you want me to submit this offer to my client, then you need to fill out a complete contract,
I
because
agree with that. I like
that's
that.
very, very, very important from our point of view. Because I mean, a lot of times they want to get in and out of review quickly. So I'm reviewing a contract. I'm trying to review what's in front of my face and do a letter before I run out the door to send to the client for review. And if half the stuff isn't in there, it makes it almost impossible for me to do that, especially with the whole quick get it in and out of review thing.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I will definitely start doing that. I kind of like that idea of, go back and, I need a rightfully done contract if you want me to submit this to my client. So yeah, I agree with that. I like that. That's a good tactic to take.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's because people are trying anything they can do to, and you get these crazy language added in paragraph 43, like we're,
Hmm.
whatever, because everybody's trying to get deals. I'm hoping that's going to chill out a little bit. But some of the stuff I see, I'm just like, okay, like I have to accept that. But but if it's in there, at least it's in there. It's not, a lot of, I just got one for UNO for a month and a half for free. I'm like, well, you got to at least get an escrow, because what if they don't move out? You
Right.
know, and
Yeah.
so I added that, and I haven't heard back from that guy yet. But I'm like, but it's just, there's things that if at least they're in there to start with, I know what to do with them. But if they're just never there,
Mhm.
then you gotta start going back and forth. Is this septic? Is it well? Is it, is it solar? Is it, I guess I don't know if I like that new ML, the seller's disclosure or not, but
Mhm.
so flipping long.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
lot more
but
detailed than the other one was. The other one was long too, but this one is just like question, like it's like the same question five different times.
yeah, I
Yeah.
realized that. And when I started reading and I'm like, and I'll look at that. I will look at that, for the well, for the septic, for those things. Like if some people fill them out beautifully, other people
Mhm.
don't have a clue.
Yeah.
That's another problem, is they fill, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And then what do you have besides nothing? Um, but I guess, if on both ends, if you can fill in as much as you can on a buy, and if you don't know the question, answer the question, if you could ask the agent, like,
Mhm.
so you can check the correct box. Um, and then that'll get it through review quicker and get you to where you want to be. And if somebody really wants to put in an offer, they should be able to, if they're submitting you in the offer, they should be able to fill it out correctly and not
Yeah.
just fill in the minimum to get the seller to sign something.
Mhm.
Because then it can easily, when things change in attorney review, it can blow things up. People get upset. It sets a bad tone. Oh, now
Mhm.
they're playing games. They just did, and you don't want to do that, because then that just, it goes through the whole transaction, you
Yeah.
know?
That's why we had to change attorneys on this because that guy was a bankruptcy attorney. And he had an issue with page 11 of the contract about where it states the commission. And he's saying that according to the contract, the buyer's agent has to pay the commission. And I'm like, that's not what it says there. That's not part of it. Well, he's under the impression that it does, and that's what it says in the contract. And he told the buyer that, and the buyer freaked out and called the agent. And then the agent freaked out, and she called me. And I was on three-way with both of them having to explain how this is not the case. So, and then we also advised him to fire his attorney, which is why we have a new attorney. So I'm like, if that's going
Yeah,
to be an issue, this guy's going to be a whole problem during
no,
this whole transaction.
yes. If
So,
you start as an issue with an attorney during, I just closed one. Oh my God, it was a nightmare from day one to day two. The day to the last day, this woman, she's the paralegal, and she just wanted to dictate where it closed as a seller's attorney, when it closed, how we showed up, who did what. And and at the end, she pretty much said no one knew how to do a closing except for them. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not the way it goes. But so, yeah, that can be a big factor in your deal, because I have a lot of, oh, my uncle, he does do real estate, but he's an attorney, and
mhm.
you are not doing any favors to yourself, because attorneys who litigate like to litigate the contract. And I had one, I could not get out of attorney review till the day we closed, because the other attorney wanted to litigate like he wanted to change every paragraph of the contract. And so my clients, on good faith, this was years ago, actually did everything, did inspections, got a mortgage, went through it, negotiated, and we still were technically not out of attorney review, because this guy wouldn't get out of attorney review. What if this happens? What if this? I'm like, oh my God, that's why you have a contract. So yeah, if you can always steer your clients into and the real estate world isn't huge. There's a lot of us who you'll see over and over again. And there's some attorneys I like to deal with, some I don't, but it's a smaller community. And when you get somebody who doesn't know it, and they can't do sale documents, they don't know how to prepare things, it makes the whole transaction a lot harder. It does not save anybody any money. In my opinion.
Agreed. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, I got a board in 21 minutes, so I gotta head out soon, but
No, no questions? What? We have an attorney on. This is once in a lifetime to get some
you guys can
questions
always call
answered.
me. I always email me, text me. I will answer any question, even if it's not about one of my deals. If there's something you have, a question on. I love dealing with your office and all the agents that I deal with there.
I'm
So
putting
always free. And
her,
if you can share my email, share my cell phone. That's the way I communicate with everybody anyway.
yep, I'm putting your email address. Is it weird I know your email address by heart by now? As much as I've seen it.
You gotta make sense of it. So it's my initials plus ESQ, so.
Right.
But then the people will do that, and they'll write Catherine with a K. I'm like, how come you were at CMF? It doesn't matter to me.
Let me get your number. Um,
I have a question. Is it okay if I ask what your rate is? Because I've been calling around to different attorneys just to see, because I'm new to the game, to see what real estate attorneys typically charge for a transaction.
So right now, my fees may go up next year, but on a sale, I'm 1,000. And then on a buy, I'm 1,200. But if we use Visionary for the title on a buy, Visionary will usually cover 200 of that fee. So the buyers pay 1,000 and Visionary covers 200 of it. I'm one of the cheaper ones in town because I work for myself. I work from home. I get yelled at all the time by other attorneys that I need to raise my fee. But so far it's worked it. But I have to say, things are getting harder. They're not getting easier
hmm,
and taking more time.
agreed.
And where are you based out of?
Sorry?
Where are you based out of?
Oh, I live in Hillsborough. I work out of my home in Hillsborough. I go wherever. I'll close wherever. I usually close at Keller Williams' office when we have closings there.
Mhm.
I go anywhere for a closing. I'm like a traveling salesman sometimes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, I gotta
Cool.
board my flight, but are we good?
Yes, we are good. I do thank you for taking your time out and coming on for Spotlight today.
Thank
Much
you. I'm sorry about the
appreciated.
mix up in the beginning.
Thank you.
Yes,
Lawrence, with the Very, Comcast or Comcat?
It was very, very informative. So it's really good.
Thank
Awesome.
you, Kat. Yeah. Now, the question for Lawrence in the email, it says Comcat.
oh, Comcast. I'm sorry. Yes,
No,
with an
no.
S. It says
Just want to make
Comcat.
sure.
I'm
That won't get to
sorry.
me.
Right, Comcast. I'm sorry. Let me write it again. But yes, Kathy, we are all good. I do appreciate you coming on today, and have a safe travel, have a safe flight,
Thank you.
and we'll see you around the office soon.
Sounds good. Bye, guys. Have a good
Awesome.
weekend.
Have a great one.
All right.
All right. I'm writing her email back in the chat again, guys. Real quick.
Thank you, Lawrence.
You're welcome. Hope you guys found this
Thank you,
informative and got
Lawrence.
some good
Thank you.
information. That scam she was talking about is crazy.
That is extremely scary.
That is scary. And then the
But
agent is liable for
yes,
$105,000.
yes.
Even though we
But
have E&O insurance, that's still something that goes and gets reported to the real estate commission. So that agent now has to go before the real estate board and like basically go through an investigation. Oh my goodness.
Lawrence, on a side note, I think that it will be appropriate at some point to have some kind of a presentation that will be cyber or kind of like internet,
Mm-hmm.
watch your step, watch your back kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
For the folks who are in attendance, really quickly, I was approached by three leads within a week, all coming through command. That there were three of them were fake. The system was the system. I guess there's some actors that started to messing around with command, and I got three leads that were only emails. First name, last name, but also emails. I went to command. I went to the technical group, and they told me that they were not legit. They're working internally, and that's probably why a lot of us receive a message recently about what is going on with command and some of the
Mm-hmm.
checkups that they're doing. Not necessarily because of my incident only, but apparently there have been some incidents about that. So watch out. This probably was one of those occasions that maybe happened to this agent
Mm-hmm.
that received an email through command or through other sources, and the person did not do the due diligence on checking person face to face and things of that nature. So
Mm-hmm.
beware of what you get. But I was actually in the middle of something like that recently. Thank God that I have some a little background in cyber, so I started looking into that, and it became a little fishy to me. But I think that it will be a great topic for the guys, even to bring somebody from KW Command that might be able to help us out understanding better what is going on and how we getting these leads and everything that has to do with that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I definitely agree because that she brought up a huge red flag in our industry with what just happened and what this is like close to home. This is Cathy. She comes in our office all the time. So this is pretty close to home that something like this happened. So we definitely have to do our due diligence when we're dealing with, people that we don't know, out of state people, whoever we are, and, come up with a good game plan to verify these people before we actually go through as far as closing on a deal and money being transferred, because once we hits that, that's complete danger zone. That's red all over. So we don't want to get into those types of things. But yes, I'll definitely look into getting someone like that. I definitely agree with us being more, more knowledgeable about how we can prevent these types of things from happening. So thank you guys for tuning on. I do appreciate you coming. I will see you guys. We have somebody jumping on, even though we're ending, so I'll let them in and let them know that we're jumping off. I do appreciate you guys coming on to this week's Spotlight. I will see you all around the office. Come on in, come see me, come hang out. I don't see anybody anymore. I'm in here alone. It's just me, Nero, and Wanda. We need some new faces. So I hope to see you guys around. You guys have a great one. Have a great weekend.
Thank you again. Bye bye.
Uh-huh. Bye.